As if I didn't already have enough on my plate with my unfixable BMW M3, the fuel pump in my 1978 Jeep Cherokee has decided to conk out. Or at least the fuel pump's the part we're going to be replacing today. I don't actually know if that's the problem, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. The problem I've been having with my Cherokee is that it just refuses to start. And I've narrowed the problem down to something with the fuel system, because when I pour gas in the carburetor, it'll actually start up and run for a few seconds, but once that gas is gone, it stalls out again. So figuring it was something to do with the fuel system, I just started with the easiest thing first. I replaced the fuel filter, and that was for a couple of reasons. The first is this might be clogged. I don't know when this has been put on. It looks pretty old, and it could just be all clogged up, and maybe putting a new filter on will fix my problem. I replaced it with a clear plastic unit so I can see if there's actually gas flowing through it. So if this was my problem, that new filter would have fixed it. If it's not, at least I can see what the problem might be. And so after I installed that new clear filter, I filled up the carburetor again with gas just to get it going, turned it over, it started and ran for a couple more seconds, but then died out again. And when I inspected the fuel filter, it's completely empty. There's no gas in there, so clearly the engine is just not getting fuel. Now, it could be a clog in the fuel line, but more than likely it's the mechanical fuel pump. These are only known to go for maybe 10, 15 years at the most, and I have no idea when it was installed. This is an old vehicle, and I don't have any history report on it, so I'm guessing that's the problem. I'm hoping it is. That's the part we're going to replace today, and hopefully I have better luck on this than I did with my BMW. Unfortunately, this fuel pump is buried pretty deep in the engine. It's attached to the engine block, and you got to kind of weave your way around the distributor and the power steering pump. It's hard to get at. I'll try to show it to you the best I can, but here is the shiny new one, which I actually ordered from Amazon, and it was a prime item, which is kind of funny for a mechanical fuel pump, but it was only 18 bucks, and it's pretty simple. There's just a shaft that kind of comes around inside the engine. It's almost like a camshaft, and it hits this and it mechanically pumps the fuel through the system, and that's how your engine gets gas. This wears out over time. Like I said, 10, 15 years you can usually expect to get out of one of these. So it's probably past it. I don't really know the best way to get at it. I don't have a manual for this, so I've read up on the internet. There's not a whole lot out there again, but from what I read, it's best to attack it from underneath the car, so I'm going to shimmy under here and see what I can see. All right, well, the good thing about working on an old SUV is you don't have to use jack stands. It's already high enough off the ground that I can just crawl under it. I've located the fuel pump from underneath the car, and it appears to be not that bad. The access is a lot better than it looks from the top, so I'll take you underneath and show you what I can see from under there. The fuel pump is that bit right there, bolted to the engine. There's two bolts, one there, one on the other side, and then it should just slide out, and then I can install the new one with the new gaskets, and hopefully we should have a running Jeep Cherokee. All right, so the old fuel pump is off. It was a little bit fiddly getting this out of there, but it wasn't that complicated. There's just a couple bolts here, and then the two fuel lines that you've got to take off. One of them's a hard line, another one's just a rubber, and actually the rubber's pretty past it. It's really old and brittle, so I'm just gonna replace that while I'm in there. So now it's just a matter of aligning this one properly, getting it nice and greased up, install it, bolt it in, get the fuel lines ran, and then hopefully this thing is going to start and run without me having to dump gas down the carburetor. And we pick up the action the next day because my grease gun was out of grease last night. It was after the auto parts store had closed, so I didn't really have any options. But then I bought a new tube of grease, opened my gun up to load it again, and it turns out this thing is still full of grease. So I don't know if my grease gun is broken or what. So at any rate, we still have to fill this with grease before we install it on the engine, so I'm going to go ahead and try to do that now. Hopefully I can get some grease to come out of here. Now we got a big old heap of grease in there. All right, so I've got this thing pretty well gooped up. Just going to do a quick cleanup on it, and then I need to still clean the engine where the old gasket was for this. And then we should be ready to put this thing back on and see if this was really the problem. All right, so I've cleaned up the engine block where the fuel pump goes to. I got the remnants of the old gasket off there, and it's a little bit tight on space, so I'm just going to go ahead and attach one of the fuel lines while I've got it kind of handy and accessible. It'll make my life easier once I get under there. All right, now that I got the new fuel line on there, nice and snug, let's see if we can feed this in and make sure. I've never done this before, so I don't really know how it works, but from what I've read, you have to get this in there just right, otherwise you're gonna have it on the wrong lobe of the cam that moves this up and down, so it's probably gonna take some finagling, but we'll pop under there and hopefully we can get it on our first try. Oh, and don't forget the gasket, which I almost did. All right, so apparently the holes for the gasket are just big enough to kind of thread the bolt through. So that's something you gotta do before you get under there. Then it'll just poke through, which I guess is good because it'll be a nice tight seal, but a little bit of a pain, but we will overcome that. Round 2. All right, the fuel pump is in. I just now have to connect one more fuel line that goes to the tank, and then I've got one more that goes to the top of the fuel pump, and then we can see if this fixed worked. All right, one more hose. All right, it's a little hard to see again, but this right here, that threaded top part, that is the top of the fuel pump. I have to now just reattach. There's a metal hard line right here that just goes back into that, and then hopefully we can do a test fire here. So I will get that hooked up and then be right back with you. All right, so that top fuel line was an absolute pain to get on, but finally I've got it on there. So I'm gonna turn the engine over. I'm not gonna try to start it just yet. I just wanna make sure nothing goes kablooey and there's no immediate leaks. And if that goes well, then we'll try to get this thing started. So here we go. All right, nothing went bang. That's a good sign. Don't see any leaks, although we also don't appear to have any fuel in the fuel filter. So let's give it a few more cranks. All right, still no fuel coming through. I think I'm going to just dump a little down its gullet and see if we can get it convinced it wants to run. If not, the problem might be internal. It might the kind of cam thing that goes around and actuates the pump could be bad, which would be bad for me because I don't know how to fix that. All right, dump some gas down the old gullet here. Hopefully it'll start and then keep running, which would be great. Come on, baby. I see fuel. I see fuel. Oh, let me show you. You can see, try to zoom in, we now have fuel running through the filter. Oh, and what a relief it is. I finally mended one of my cars. That fuel pump was the problem, and now this thing is running and running quite well. I'm gonna do some more shakedown testing in the coming days just to make sure everything's tight and there's no fuel leaks, because that would obviously be a bad thing, but I'm pretty close to saying that this job is done. And now I can move on to the other projects I have, which are quite a lot. I've still got that 1997 BMW to get running right, and then I've got all the aesthetic upgrades I have planned for it. So if you want to see all that, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. And as always, thanks for watching.